we'll just give it a minute to give everyone a chance to so that we don't lose reception. So.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got 2 people watching so far. Our reception is a little spotty here, but we're on Wi-Fi, so hopefully it'll work for us. Who's in there while we wait for more people to join?
This is Lila. She's a western painted turtle, and this is Avalanche, and he is a red-eared slider. Yeah. We'll be talking about them in more detail, so we'll learn all about them.
Oh, they're so sweet. Awesome.
You can come around here too if you want.
Perfect. Let's just give it maybe like 30 seconds, and then we'll give it. We'll start.
Okay.
Little swimmer. Awesome. So why don't we get started? Why don't we get started now, and people can continue to join us as we go along. There we go. Awesome.
All right, so welcome everybody to our Facebook Live here at the Wildlife Park. Today we're going to be talking about turtles and tortoises. My name is Lexa and this is Sam. We're both so what we're kind of going to do today is we're going to first talk about how to tell turtles and tortoises apart. Then we'll meet a few special guests, and then we'll hopefully be able to answer any questions you all might have about the turtles and tortoises. So I'll kind of start it off with talking about turtles and tortoises and how to tell them apart. So kind of the easiest way to tell them apart is by looking at where they live. So turtles are mostly aquatic. Most turtles spend a lot of time in the water. So turtles are sort of designed for that. Streamlined shells, you can kind of see in this picture here. So streamlined shells for easy swimming in the water, and kind of flipper-like feet as well, and they have webbing, which makes them excellent swimmers. If we look at tortoises in this picture here, they're primarily land-dwelling creatures. So they've got a much more tall and rounded shell and what's called elephantine back feet. Or elephantine back legs, which kind of means they look like an elephant's leg. They're sort of long and thick and a little bit stumpy, and they're really strong to be able to hold up the weight of the tortoise. So that's kind of the major difference. And then you can also look at their diet. So turtles are what's called an omnivore. So that means they eat plants and meat, whereas tortoises tend to be more herbivorous. So they eat more plants, although some tortoises do sometimes eat a little bit of animal matter as well. So those are kind of the really big differences and the easiest ways to tell them apart, because they can look quite similar. So I think what we'll do next is meet our first special guest. So the first one we're going to meet is Lila, which is that one there. Lila is a western painted turtle, and her kind of distinguishing features are obviously she's and legs and tail, but her kind of most distinguishing feature is her plastron, which is the bottom part of her shell. So Sam's just going to pick her up and show you. You can see it's kind of a reddish orange, and it's got a bunch of different sort of patterns on it. That's kind of the most distinguishing feature of a painted turtle, is definitely that bottom part of their shell. I mentioned turtles are omnivores. With the painted turtle, however, when they're younger, they tend to eat a lot more meat, so they tend to be more carnivorous. Compared to when they get older, they tend to eat a little bit more plant matter. But they are still omnivores. They'll still, in terms of reproduction, ice clears off ponds. They'll actually start to court each other. And once the turtles find a mate, they sink down to the bottom of a pond and mate. Then what will happen is a female will come up onto land. They actually lay their eggs on land, not in the water. So she'll come up onto land and dig a nice nest with her hind legs, and she will lay her eggs in there. They're about the size of a toonie, and painted turtles have about kind of 6 to 18 eggs, just depending on how successful they are. So they'll lay their eggs in the nest, and then September, the turtles' hatchlings will hatch. Sometimes they'll emerge from the nest and go to the lake or pond, wherever they're living. But sometimes they'll actually overwinter in the nest as well. So they'll stay in there over the winter.
Do they mate for life?
I actually don't think turtles mate for life. Usually it's, I don't think they're monogamous. They don't have one mate. I believe they just the males will compete for the female, and whoever, I know with painted turtles, what will happen is the males will actually chase the female, and whoever catches her first will kind of swim in front of her. And then sometimes they'll actually stroke the female's face with their claws. And if the female is willing to mate, they'll sink down to the bottom and they'll mate. So it's kind of a little bit of a competition. Yeah. But yeah, so sometimes the hatchlings will emerge, sometimes they won't. It just kind of depends. So where they live, I mentioned they kind of like to live in sort of ponds, lakes, any sort of slow-moving water with nice muddy bottoms and lots of aquatic vegetation. So also, yeah, sort of slow-moving streams, slow-moving. You might be wondering where can I find painted turtles? You can actually find them all around Kamloops. They're native to Central North America, and you can find them here in BC. So painted turtles are actually the only native pond turtle left here in BC, which means it's kind of the only natural species that's left here. And their populations aren't doing the best here in BC. The one population that's on the coast is actually endangered, and the one that's sort of in the interior is of special concern. And so they're facing kind of decreased populations due to habitat loss, pollution, and also another species, which is the red-eared slider we're going to talk about in just a second, competition from these turtles as well. One kind of cool fact I'll mention about painted turtles is they do hibernate. So in
There we go. Sorry about that. They can't hear me. If you could just let everyone know that.
yeah, just some tech.
Phone overheated.
Yeah, so sorry guys about that. Our phone just overheated, so we'll kind of continue on now. Hopefully it doesn't overheat anymore. The one cool fact I wanted to tell you guys is painted turtles, so they do hibernate. They'll swim down to the bottom of a lake or pond to spend their winter. And what they'll do is they'll anchor themselves in the mud with kind of the front of their body. So they can't breathe in the traditional manner that they usually do. Instead, what they do is they kind of breathe through their rear end. So they actually do oxygen transfer. Their rear end is really vascularized, so it's got lots of blood vessels, and they can transfer oxygen through the water, which is really neat. So I think we'll move on to our next guest.
Sorry, we just have a couple of questions here. What do they eat?
So painted turtles and other turtles are omnivores, and they're called what?
And why the turtle's beak is more pointed upwards, as you can see as they're swimming at the surface.
That I'm not too sure about.
So if their head is pointed upwards, they actually have their nostrils right there. So I believe part of that is they're just breathing.
Oh,
Yeah.
Can you breathe underwater?
They can. So they don't breathe in the kind of traditional manner through their lungs, though. They'll do that oxygen transfer through their rear ends. And they can hold their breath underwater as well, like while they're looking for food and stuff like that. So they don't necessarily do that oxygen transfer just while they're hunting, mostly through hibernation.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then another question, do turtles make good pets?
So the thing about owning reptiles for pets is most people don't realize they can live a really long time. So both Lila and Eve can live to be over 20 years old. Lila kind of 20 to 30 years, Avalanche 20 to kind of 40 years old. So it's a really long commitment to have them as a pet. And they also kind of require special lighting, special nutrients, things like that. And here in BC, you actually can't have painted turtles as pets. You can have red sliders, but they just take a lot of work and a lot of commitment. So, yeah.
And then, sorry, how did Lila, how did she come to be at the park?
So Lila came to the park. Unfortunately, her habitat was destroyed. She's kind of a really great example of habitat loss for this species. And yeah, like I mentioned, so habitat loss, pollution, it's all affecting where they live out in the wild. So she's just kind of a good representation of that as well.
And is there something that we should do to make sure that we're not, how do we protect their habitat?
Lots of things you can do, like when you're hiking and going out into nature, just make sure you stay on trails, things like that. We're not disrupting sort of their natural environment. If you see turtles too, you always make sure to just give them space and look from afar. Do you have anything else to add to that, Millie?
No, nothing that I can think of currently.
Just making
Find them away from a water source. Should you move them back to a water source or just leave them?
So what's kind of best to do is just leave them be and let them kind of do their natural thing. If oftentimes turtles will make their nests not far away from the water, but they can be quite a distance from the water, so they might be traveling to their nesting site. So it's best to just kind of let them be and kind of let them do their own thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so is there any more questions?
Nope, we're
Okay, cool. So we'll move on to Avalanche, and he is a red-eared slider. You can see he kind of looks quite similar to Lila. Red-eared sliders and painted turtles do look quite similar, but the easiest way to tell these two apart is by the little red patches on the red-eared slider's face. You can tell again by the bottoms of their shell as well, but that can be harder to see kind of in the wild compared to just the side of his cheek there. In terms of diet, they eat pretty much similar things. Frogs, tadpoles, aquatic plants, and just like the painted turtle, when they're younger, they tend to be more carnivorous. And when they get older, they tend to be a little bit more herbivorous. So they tend to just favor aquatic plants a little more. Reproduction, they do generally reproduce the same way. They mate, lay their eggs on land, and then with red-eared sliders, I believe they
do mate multiple times in a single year. Yeah.
So they'll mate multiple times, or can mate multiple times, and kind of similar to the painted turtle, the hatchlings will sometimes spend the winter in the nest as well, but sometimes they'll go to the water. In terms of habitat, again, really similar to the painted turtle, they like to live in kind of the same place. Slow-moving streams, ponds, lakes, again, anywhere with muddy bottoms and lots of plants to eat. And unlike the painted turtle, though, they're not from here. So they're actually from the southern United States, Mexico, Central America. And the way they came here was actually through the pet trade. So like I mentioned earlier, you can have red-eared sliders as pets, but you can't have a painted turtle as a pet. And because they can live so long, sometimes, people end up not being able to take care of them anymore, or they kind of get tired of them. So they were actually, lots of them released out into the wild. And unfortunately, they've reproduced and kind of their populations have increased. And so with the introduction of this species, it's kind of disrupted the food chain a little. So they're in competition with the painted turtle for habitat and food and mating sites and nesting sites and all that kind of stuff. So their populations are kind of increasing, and just because they grow a little bit bigger, they're sort of a little bit more aggressive, and they can kind of live a little bit longer as well. So they're in competition with the painted turtle.
Would a painted turtle and red-eared slider, would they ever meet?
That I'm not sure about. We can definitely find out. We can maybe look it up and put it in the comments, but I'm not too sure if they would actually successfully reproduce.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add, Sam?
Are there any questions?
Yeah.
So far, no other questions.
Okay.
All right. So we've talked about two species of turtles. Now we're going to move on to our next special guest, and he is similar in some ways, but quite different in a lot of ways. So this is, and we'll just get him out. And Morty is a red-footed tortoise. Oh, the wheel came off on his. Oh, the wheel came off. So, unlike the western painted turtle and the red-eared slider, the chances of you ever seeing a red-footed tortoise in the wild in Canada are very unlikely, because these animals are more about their habitat. Let's take a look at why these animals are called red-footed tortoises. So it's a really simple explanation. They have these red spots on the back of their feet and on their front feet, and some red on their head. So they're called a red-footed tortoise because, well, they've got red feet. So unlike turtles, these animals are primarily herbivores, although this species does consume some other animal matter. But primarily in the wild, he will be eating things like grasses, or fruits, or plants, and flowers. And actually, a fun fact about tortoises is since they're not like mammals, they don't have teeth. When they eat, they don't grind their food up. So the fruit actually destroyed. So a turtle will eat some fruit, then a tortoise can eat some fruit, then he'll wander off. He'll go for a walk, and then actually he can poop out all those seeds, and they'll still be intact. And then they can germinate and form new plants. So they're really important for seed dispersal. So red-footed tortoises, just like turtles, they live, and those baby tortoises will hatch, and they'll be completely independent, so they can go off on their own, and so they don't need their mother tortoise looking after them. Once they're hatched, they're ready to go. So I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but again, these animals are not native to North America. You're not going to find them in Canada. But you will find them in South America. So from Panama to Argentina, those northern parts of South America, Central America are really good places to find tortoises. And the habitat-wise, good places to see them are in dry grasslands all the way to those humid, wet environments like the rainforests. Those are all really good places to find red-footed tortoises. As for conservation, not a lot is known about the conservation of red-footed tortoise. Remember to do your research, and if you end up with a pet like a red-eared slider, don't release it into the wild because these can have really bad impacts on our environments. Are there any questions about red-footed tortoises or turtles?
So when a turtle or a tortoise is scared, is it true that they hide in their shell?
So they actually can't, some species can retract their head into their Wonderful.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions that we have so far. Is there anything that you guys wanted to add? Actually, one question. Why do they have these little lumps?
So actually, this isn't really a typical feature of this species. So this is what we call tortoiseshell pyramiding, and this actually is a sign of nutrient deficiency. So before he came to the wildlife park, he was someone's pet, and unfortunately, he just didn't get the proper diet. It's a sign of a lot of more protein and not a lot of calcium. But here at the wildlife park, he gets fed a very tasty salad, lots of vegetables, because again, these animals are more herbivorous. They eat plants. Any more questions?
That's it for now.
Wonderful. If you're curious why he is blowing a snot bubble, Morty is being treated currently for a respiratory problem. That isn't another typical trait of tortoises.
Aww. Why is Morty here?
So Morty, again, he was someone's pet, and I believe his owner just wasn't capable of taking care of him any longer. And like I said, these animals live a very long time. Morty is only 12 years old. So again, make sure you do your research before you get a pet like this, because they live a very long time.
Sorry, and just in case we missed it, how long can tortoises live?
So this specific species, in proper human care, if you take care of them very well, they can live well over 50 years, almost 90 years. Yes, so a very, very long time.
That's wonderful. Awesome. Well, it looks like there's no other questions so far. So, is there anything you guys want to say to wrap things up?
Anything else you can think of?
Not too much. Just thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate all your support with our live talks and everything like that, and your patience for
Yes,
our
thank
technical
you.
difficulties and everything. And if you have any questions about turtles, questions about tortoises, you can post them in the comments or even come see us here at the park. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Actually, one last question. Can you ever meet any of the turtles or Morty in any encounters or anything? Do you do private?
We do, yeah. So we do private animal encounters. To book any of those, there's a few different animals you can do it with. You just email the education department. Unfortunately, right now we can't touch any of them just because of COVID and everything that's going on right now. sometimes if you're here at the park too, we also take them out for sun. So if you happen to be here, sometimes you can catch them there as well. But if you want sort of more of a private setting, you can definitely give us an email and we can book something for you.
That's wonderful. Awesome. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.